Hey everyone, it's been a long time since I've uploaded a video. I had to remove all of my other videos because of the BitConnect thing. So yeah, that's probably a scam, but some of us got caught up into that. It's another time. But I thought I'd give a shot at trying to give a price projection for Bitcoin within the next year. So that's kind of what all this is about. You know, absorb it, take it all in. There's a lot written on this board. What you see here is the past highs and lows of Bitcoin since its inception. Well, since the first time that it was used as money, someone gave, I forget the amount, but it's like $5 worth, and I forget the number of Bitcoin, but it equals about less than 1/10 of 1 penny. That was the very first time it was used as money, so that's like our basis for starting. And there have been several price cycles, as you can see here. This is the last one from 2017. I didn't have enough room here, but I find it interesting, the behavior of Bitcoin. Prior to the first halvening, we had 3 identifiable price swings, bull markets, and then not really pump and dumps because it still keeps going up. No matter if you had bought at any time during Bitcoin's price cycle, you would have made money. But since the first halvening, it seemed to have created itself a pattern. But here we have 3 highs before the first halvening. Before the second halvening, we kind of had 2 highs, 2 of these price cycles. It went up to 213 and then again to 1132. So in the second, first to second halvening, we reduced the number of cycles by 1. And so then you go from the second to the third halvening, and in between that time, we only had 1 spike. So I don't know if beyond the third and fourth halvening, if we will even have a spike. I mean, we are technically in the bull run phase that you can see right here. Kind of hashed it out with little dotted marks or whatever. So we're technically in this phase right now. We've beat the old high of the 19,000. We're up at like 23, 24-ish thousand right now. And I don't know if we're gonna have a slow incline over the next 4 years, or if we're gonna continue the same price cycle that we had last time over 1 year. So if we continue the same price cycle that we've had over the past 1 year, then Bitcoin should spike, reach its next new high somewhere around a year from now in December. I estimate on a lot of these the October to February range, because some of these spikes have happened earlier in November, then in February, as late as April, again in November. So that October to February range I feel like is a good timeline, and that's actually coincidentally when it tends to have the bottoms, the same time of year, about a year later. This happened in the same year, very early on before the first halvening though. But this one happened about a year later. This one happened about a year later. So we're looking over the next 2 years, Bitcoin to go up from, 20-ish thousand all the way up to my price projection for this next swing. I don't know if you can see that, is 100 to 400,000. I think that's a good price estimate based on the multiplier of the last previous high. So you can see the multiplier of this would be, I think, 5 if we went to 100,000, 20,000 into 100, which has been somewhat consistent. We had 17x since the 1132 to 1948, which that's the same right here. So, I mean, reaching 400,000 is not out of the question. I would like, my personal price goal, I would like it to be upwards to 300,000. That's where this pattern, it looks best for me if it reaches that point. And also, I was kind of breaking down, how many Bitcoin you'd have to retire. I haven't quite figured that out yet. It's still on the board though. But I do absolutely believe that despite the cycles themselves, that Bitcoin will reach probably 10 to 15 million to $50 million per coin. And that's because if you look over here, I've written the amount of investable gold that is available in the world is about $10 trillion. So if you divide that by 21 million Bitcoin, you get about $500,000 of Bitcoin. So that's a starting point, I feel, for a good measure of where Bitcoin should go. But the next level is the total global debt, and that is 272 trillion. So divide that by 21 million Bitcoin, and you get about 13 million. So if this is best case scenario, if 100% of the global debt goes into Bitcoin, easily we could see $13 million of Bitcoin. Now, I have reason to believe that if all of that debt did go into Bitcoin, that's not the high. Like, I feel like because of the expansive nature of the amount of money that we print, that mentality in people is going to want to continue. So when this money starts coming in, it will probably bid up the price higher and higher, and we might still have these kinds of swings, but I think in the long run, we're probably going to see a more steady incline, sort of like what you might see in the stock market in terms of like your average rate of return is between like 5 to 8% a year, something like that. So I feel like these swings will get less volatile, but they might still happen. So, but this is my price target for this next year. In the next year, 100 to 400,000. I think it's doable. You could try to get more Bitcoin with these price swings. I think it's risky. If you had one Bitcoin, you could have gotten roughly 5.6 times more Bitcoin, if you had sold at the top and then bought at the bottom. Same thing with here, that was, roughly 7 times more, something like that. But, you can acquire more Bitcoin, so you don't need a whole Bitcoin if you want to make these trades in order to eventually reach 1 Bitcoin. I feel like right now, 0.1 Bitcoin, which is roughly $2,400, I feel like that would probably be a good minimum. That way you're not spending a whole lot of time trying to make these price swings, because the next one, I feel like the next low we could reach, I had it written down somewhere, I think the next low is probably going to be around $75,000. Like I said, I had it written down, but I must have erased it. But $75,000 I think is probably a higher low. I think we could go as low as probably 30 to 35,000. So, if we even reach just the low of 100, on the low estimate of $100,000 per Bitcoin, then you could at least get 1.25 extra Bitcoin, all the way up to, if we go to 300,000 or 400,000 and, it dips down back to 30 to 35,000, you could probably get up to 10 times more Bitcoin if you want to try and make that trade. I would highly suggest always keeping 0.1 Bitcoin, 1/10 of 1 Bitcoin in your wallet. I would never let go of at least 0.1 Bitcoin at this point. But I think I'm actually gonna make this trade. And so you kind of see up on here at the top, the 20 to 2021 meme economy. Now, that's not to say that memes in the sense of just the images that you see online, but take Tesla for instance. Tesla has not increased its output by 500%. It's not increased its income by 500%, yet the stock price has increased by 500%. And so Elon Musk and Tesla have essentially become a meme, and people are hyping it up, and they're just bidding the price up because it's a meme. Like, I don't know how else to explain it really. It's a fad. People are attracted to it. They like it when the price is high. They didn't like it when the price was low, around $80 just earlier this year, I think it was. So that's why I feel like the meme economy kind of applies to Bitcoin this time around. I think we'll move on to a more serious kind of economy, especially if we have another sort of recession or crash, which I might go into another video on that, which I don't think that we quite have the severe of crash that a lot of these other YouTubers are putting out there. It's just the human mentality and how disassociated a lot of people are with what money actually is. So I don't think that we're really going to see a crash. I think that we're going to see a lot of what people have also described as a melt up, and that's where because so much money has been printed, it just goes straight into the stock market, and prices just keep going up and going up and going up, and there just seems to be no end to it, and it just explodes like off the top. And I don't know if people will even at that point feel like that their money is worthless. I think that they're just going to look at the stock market and save their praises, say their praises. But and I think that style of mentality will apply to Bitcoin, at least for the next year to hopefully the next 4 years, if we go through another similar price cycle. It'd be very interesting for me to see when or if we have this next spike, if it coincides with a similar pattern that we've seen here. And the other interesting thing that I kind of have seen is that the comparison between the high and the next low is somewhere around 2 times. Here it did, from the 213 to 201, it did go down below its previous high. So we actually have a precedent for that if Bitcoin does go below 20,000 the next price cycle. So if that happens, it's actually not an unusual thing, which is good to happen. Not good for it to happen, but good to have that precedent to know that it's possible and that we're not breaking cycles or patterns here. So based on, roughly 2 times from the high to the next low, that would, put us at around 40,000. And I think a better case scenario, if you went to 30, 35,000 to try and, get more Bitcoin, if it goes up, to 100 to 400,000, that way you can just increase the amount that you've got. I think that's a good scenario to look forward to. But kind of what I've written here, it doesn't really matter how much you've got. I think 0.1 is a good place to start. I think that even if you had 0.01, just a couple $100 in Bitcoin, or even, I'd say probably $100 in Bitcoin at this time is probably the minimum that you want to have in there, because if you want to hold that for 10, 20-ish years, I think it's actually possible for Bitcoin to go up to $100 million per Bitcoin, because I think that we will move from price to value because what's the price of $1? I mean, you use $1 to buy things every day at the store, bread, whatever. So I think that that's what will happen to Bitcoin, is that we will start to disassociate its price per Bitcoin to how much stuff can I get per Bitcoin or per Satoshi, and I think that is how we will justify in our minds that one Bitcoin could actually be worth $50 to $150 million. I think we'll look at it in terms of just not the number, not the actual price per US dollar per Bitcoin that we'll have, but the amount of stuff that it can buy, like the US dollar can now. So that's just kind of like my interpretation. We have 365 days to go, roughly, and it's not about the money that you make, it's about what you do with the time. Like if you knew 100% that you were going to be financially independent and safe for the rest of your life, if you just had, say for instance, you had 1 Bitcoin and you held on to it for 10, 20 years, you would not have to worry about a retirement. If you were that focused and believed that much in Bitcoin, I mean, that's 24,000, 25,000 on the high end, if you get it a little late. But, I'm trying to quietly, I guess, convince people that it's at least a good investment. It is very volatile and risky right now, but it's like getting in on the ground floor of, if you could invest in, say, just the internet itself. I think this is the internet of money. Bitcoin is digital gold. It's a store of value. There's a lot of those terms being thrown around, but I personally believe that this is a good place to have investment money. And I think that holding on to US dollars, your purchasing power is going to decrease, especially over this next year. I just feel like consumer prices are going to increase with the amount of inflation that the Fed has been printing. I mean, they literally just type digits into a computer and they've increased the money supply. We're getting $600 checks while these multi-million-dollar corporations are getting billions of dollars. Like, you cannot rely on the government. Like, you just can't. Like, if you have social services that you require, then that's great, but I feel like you really need to take a step and to try and disassociate yourself from
government and the government's money. I feel like Bitcoin is a great money store of value, just like gold and silver and other assets like art or collectibles, or if you have, you know, high value furniture, for instance, or, you know, what, or anything. I think that having those other assets are going to, I think commodities in general are going to increase in price dramatically over this next year. That's just me. I'm not a financial expert whatsoever. Don't take my opinion. I'm just a guy on the internet, but that's just kind of what I think. And I hope y'all enjoy. I'll make another video.